Omagyanatimandasyat Sanamsla Slakya Sakshrimritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svamrupagadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuda Padakamanam Shiram Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Jagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Satjivam Sadvaitam Savalutam Bhajana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lita Shivshakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sinudina Bandhajat Pate Gopesha Gopakanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchna Kaurangi Radhe Vindavanashvi Vishabhana Sudadevi Pranamama Haripriya Vaha Kalpta Vishaki Basan Mevisha Padmam Pavanabhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachani Satani Srila Prabhupada Ki. So, today we will look at the last half of the 13th chapter. And last time we heard in the first part, verses 1 to 7, we discussed Kshetra and Kshetra, the field of activities and the knower of the field. These were two of the six topics discussed in this chapter. There are 6 topics that Prakriti, Purush, Kshetra, Kshetra, Jnana and Jnana. So today we will look at Prakriti and Purush, because in the last lesson we heard about Jnana and Jnana. Jnana of Jnana means the object of knowledge, and that comprises the soul and the supersoul. So we heard last time the description of the self and the supersoul. And Krishna now in verses 20 to 26 will again speak about the soul and supersoul, but as Purush, the enjoyer, and especially in connection with Prakriti, material nature. That so we will hear in this chapter that there is a verse that says that one who understands this Prakriti, this Purush, and their interactions can attain liberation. That liberation.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Yes, please.
Maharaj, from last class, I had one doubt. Can I ask?
Yes, sure. Please.
Maharaj, like in the first section where 24 elements of field of activities are defined,
Yeah.
one of the element is unmanifested.
Yeah.
So, I was reading the purport. So, in that it is mentioned that unmanifested is the 3 modes of nature.
Unmanifested, yeah.
Yeah. So, but the 3 modes are manifested in front of us. Like we can see that we are under the influence. So, how those are unmanifested?
Well, it's that they manifest. This is explained in the Bhagavatam. So the creation starts from Karnodakashaya Vishnu, who exhales and by his glance he puts in Brahman the three modes of nature unmanifested. So he puts that in there. And from there, then he injects with his glance the living entities. And he injects time. And living entities are the souls, the jivas, and they have material desires. And by these material desires, the equilibrium of the unmanifested starts to. The equilibrium means they are in balance in the beginning when the Lord puts them in Brahman, and they start to interact. And then it becomes pradhan. And from there it develops further. Then the false ego is created from that. A false ego interacts with the mode of goodness, with the modes of passion, with the modes of ignorance, and different things come out. That's all described in detail. But the cause is also in the effect that although it's unmanifested and it becomes manifest, still the unmanifest side is still there. Because after the creation it will become unmanifest again. That this is not easy to understand. That to understand these transcendental subject matters with our brain, it will not go. With logic you can not understand these things, because it's beyond logic. It does not mean that it is illogical, it's translogical. So that is something, this inconceivable aspect comes back again and again. It cannot be understood by our brain. It can be understood through the heart by pure devotion. Then we come to the transcendental platform. And our transcendental intelligence develops. So, that is what I could say about it, Tarun Prabhu. Is that okay? Oh. Okay. Then we will go. Today, we will proceed a little different. I put a verse on the screen. Can someone read on the screen, please, the Sanskrit that who wants to read?
Can I read?
Yes, go.
Prakritim Purusham Saiva Anadi Tatpati Vikarmasta Saiva Prakriti Sambhavat.
Yeah, you can read the translation also.
Yeah. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginning. Their transformation and the modes of matter are products of material nature.
Yes. Yes. So material nature and the living entities are beginningless. That means our spirit soul had no beginning. We are as old as Krishna. That we are eternal. It's difficult. We spoke about this beyond logic. In this world, everything has a beginning and an end. But we don't have a beginning and an end as a spirit soul. We are eternal, part and parcel of Krishna. So we just cannot understand that with our material brain, because the brain is material and you cannot understand spiritual matters. You can understand logic. The logic of this world we can understand. But with logic you cannot understand the absolute truth. There was Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya received sannyas when he was 11 years old. And when he was 18, he memorized practically the Bhagavatam and he was known as a great scholar in the area. And he got a visit of a disciple of a great Buddhist master. And the disciple said, "My master wants to have a debate with you on the absolute truth." And Madhvacharya replied, "The absolute truth cannot be understood by logic." So there was no debate. It's useless. Of course, logic can support our knowledge in spiritual life. But it has only a supportive function. But in many cases, logic too short to understand transcendental matters. But here in this verse, that also material nature is eternal. That means material nature existed before the creation. So it existed before the creation. We just spoke about it, unmanifested. But it existed. It exists. This material energy is an energy of the Lord. And also the living entities. We are both energy. With the spiritual energy, we have heard, apariyamitat vanye prakatim vidyameparam. Beside this material energy, Krishna said, is the higher spiritual energy, which comprises the living entities. So the living entities are the superior energy. Both the living entities and material nature existed before the cosmos was manifested. When it was not manifested, material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in Mahavishnu, Karnodakashaya Vishnu. And then, when it was required, it manifests again. So similarly, living entities are also in him. We spoke about these 24 elements, but that is a way of presentation in Sankhya Yoga. Some have 25 elements, and another 26. Some include the super soul. So it's a way of counting. That's what it is. So you have different Sankhya systems of counting there. We studied that in the Bhagavatam, and we found out there are different systems. So the living entities are also in the Lord. But here they are conditioned. Conditioned means they are averse to serving the Lord. They are brought into illusion because everything belongs to the Lord. He's the proprietor and therefore the enjoyer. But the conditioned soul thinks, I'm the enjoyer and that should be mine. So that's criminal. You try to enjoy something which belongs to another. Therefore we are here. That we are conditioned, averse to serving the Lord. So therefore they are not allowed to enter in the spiritual sky. In some way we are in the spiritual sky, because everything is the kingdom of God. That's the good news, we are in the kingdom of God. Bad news is we are in the prison section. That a dark cloud in the spiritual sky, the material world. That, yeah. But every creation, these living entities are coming out and they are giving a chance to become rectified. So it really does not matter to know why we fell from the spiritual world and what was our history. We can, it's millions of births, we can trace it back anyway. Therefore, we are called Nitya Baddha, eternally conditioned. Not that you cannot come out of your condition, no, but we cannot trace the history back. It's impossible. We change bodies, we forget our previous lives. In this life, we have so many problems and bad relationships and good relationships, different things. At the end of life, all these relationships, all these things are finished in this material world. Are we still concerned with the family in our previous life? In our previous life, we were very much attached. No, are we concerned with it? We don't remember them. It's all gone. But we are all spirit souls. We are all equal on the spiritual platform. Spiritually, we are all the same. In our pure state, Sat Chit Ananda, full of bliss, eternal knowledge. Now, more Jnana in text 21. Can someone read text 21, Sanskrit first?
Hare Krishna. कार्यकारणकर्तृत्वे हेतुः प्रकृतिरुच्यते पुरुषः सुखदुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतुरुच्यते.
Translation.
Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of.
Yeah, so the living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyment. So that's important information. Because we are given a particular body according to our desires. And we get a certain body to enjoy and to suffer. That's the consequences of our acts in previous lives. But we have caused this body by our actions in previous life, by our cultivation of consciousness, material consciousness. So there are 8,400,000 bodies. And by accepting that body, we come under control of material nature. The body is matter. The body has to function according to the laws of material nature. Like if you have a gross body, you cannot walk through the wall, not possible. You will meet with obstructions, obstacles. But if you have a subtle body, only a subtle body, like the demigods, is a special subtle body. They have no gross body, it's a subtle body. They can go to the wall, they can sit on a cloud. That's interesting. But if you have a spiritual body, then you can travel everywhere in the material and the spiritual worlds. So the body restricts us. So we want to reactivate our spiritual body again. Spirit soul means also spiritual body. Srila Prabhupada said the spiritual senses are there, but they are now covered. This hand is covered with a subtle hand and a gross hand. Subtle and gross body. But we need our spiritual senses, Srila Prabhupada said. Spiritual senses are now covered. And we must uncover it by the process of Krishna consciousness. Get rid of these bodies. So as long as we have these bodies are under, they cause us suffering and enjoyment in this world. And when you take birth, it's already predestined. Tashaivaita prayatediko vido nalapyate pramatamyo prayata dalapyateduka van anyatosukan kalensa vata kabila ramasa. One should search for the happiness which is not available in this world, from the lowest till the highest planet. And what material happiness is concerned, one does not need to strive for it. Like suffering comes on its own accord, in the same way happiness will come. Astrologers, they know that astrology is not more than the calculation of your karma. But unfortunately there are no good astrologers anymore. Yes, our material happiness and distress is due to the body. So we desire to lord over the material nature, and therefore we are struggling very hard to acquire different kinds of pleasure for the body. Yes, according to one's desires and activities, material nature places us in residential quarters. Yes, interesting. Srila Prabhupada used that term, residential quarters. Some have a first class palace, others have a simple apartment. Different quarters. Some becomes Brahma, others become an ant, different residential quarters. And you have to act according to the quarter you get. That one comes under control of the body. And because the body is under control of the laws of is controlled by the laws of material nature. If you have the body of a dog, you cannot chant Hare Krishna, although Lord Chaitanya did it. There was this dog which traveled with the devotees from Bengal to Jagannath-puri. Anyway, that's Lord Chaitanya made him chant Hare Krishna. So that's the law of nature. But still, the super soul is with the soul. That's not leaving. Text 22. Can someone read 22?
The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species.
Yes. This verse has been quoted by Srila Prabhupada many times. Bhunkte prakati jan kunan. That is by Purusa Prakati story is placed in this material nature by its association with the modes, that when it travels from one species to another. So as long as we remain captivated by this material energy, one must transmigrate from one body to another. But because we are material nature put us into undesirable circumstances that it's the living entity thinks himself the master of all circumstances. But therefore, we must rise above this material nature. We must place us in a transcendental position, and that change can be affected by hearing from authoritative sources, Srila Prabhupada said. That starts with the hearing process. If we hear about Krishna, if we hear Bhagavad Gita, if we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, we will lose our long-cherished desire to dominate material nature. And finally, we will come to enjoy spiritual happiness. Because a living entity is, Ananda Maya Abhyasat. Naturally, it wants to enjoy. But we are meant for spiritual enjoyment, not material enjoyment. So, Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport. In a Vedic mantra it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of God, that he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. Vyatem Vatsha Prema, then he will cherish all these rasas in relationship with Krishna. Text 23 gives us important information about the Super Soul. So please read.
Apologies, Maharaj, can I ask a question on text 22?
Yes, sure.
It says that Arjuna is hearing it directly from Krishna. So obviously he got it from the main source. But one thing that keeps coming in my mind is that was Arjuna a Krishna consciousness person? So Krishna was his friend, so he was in his company for most of his life, but then there was no conscious effort as such, right, to kind of pray or to pray to Krishna, to to kind of give him mercy. And you know what I'm saying. So obviously we are nowhere close to them, but then the position is very different, where there is a conscious effort on our part to work on becoming Krishna conscious, right? So can you please help me understanding this is different? I mean, the whole relationship is very different, I know that. But there was no conscious effort on Arjuna's part or Pandava's part or whosoever was there with Krishna to become Krishna conscious. Were they Krishna conscious?
No, Arjuna is an eternal associate of Krishna, and his service is to travel with Krishna from universe to universe. He is on the spiritual platform, is a pure devotee. He does not endeavor to become Krishna conscious. He is Krishna conscious and lives in a relationship with Krishna in one of the rasas, Sakya Ras. Krishna is his friend. And we will learn in the Bhagavatam about the Vrajavasis. Vrajavasis, they see Krishna as their friend, as their lover, as their son, according that, but they don't care whether he's God or not. They are so absorbed in love for him that comes at the background of their thinking. So these are the perfected beings. But Krishna wants to Arjuna to help him and ask him the right questions to speak Bhagavad Gita. So what does Krishna do? He brings Arjuna temporarily in illusion. But he doesn't use his Maya Sakti, his material illusion. He brings us under Yoga Maya, spiritual illusion, and inspires him from within to ask the right questions so that Krishna can speak Bhagavad Gita for our benefit. It's inspiring to him to ask the right questions. We have heard about that before. Krishna Srila Prabhupada explains it in the purports. Because Arjuna acts like he doesn't know who Krishna is. But before, when they were in exile, Damya, the priest, the family priests of the Pandavas, that they discussed, and from these discussions it appears that the Pandavas know very well Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. They know it. And Krishna visited them during the exile, but they never complained. Krishna, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, please, why are we suffering here? No, they were the servants of Krishna, and they were facilitating is to help him in his mission. And also the other Pandavas, they will go from universe to universe with Krishna. So that has to be understood. Arjuna is not a person like us. Arjuna, Srila Prabhupada said, is 1,000 times more qualified than all of us. That he's on the spiritual platform. But through Yoga Maya, because I think you must have discussed that in the 2nd chapter already. That there in the 2nd chapter, this point is made that in one purport, Srila Prabhupada says, yes, that Arjuna feels compassion because he's a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada writes that, and in another verse he said, yes, this here Arjuna has weakness of heart. That and there he plays the role of a condition. So that, but also in the purport we have heard that in the 4th chapter also. In the 4th chapter, Krishna explains that Iman Vishvasvate Yogam, that so Krishna explains to Arjuna, yes, I explained this science to the sun god. And then, little further, Arjuna is asking that question, but Krishna, how can I understand it? We were born practically at the same time. How could you have explained that to the sun god? In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, when Krishna, so many million years ago, explained this sign to the sun god, then Arjuna was also there, but in another capacity. He had a body made of fire. Srila Prabhupada writes that in the purport. So we can understand how Arjuna is traveling with Krishna. That it is in the mood of friendship. But is in the mood of friendship. Friendship means equal. He sees Krishna as equal. And we have seen in the 11th chapter, he comes out of that mood. And that's not naturally for Arjuna. He said, no, Krishna, sorry, please forgive me for my offenses. But Krishna does not like that. He wants the Sakyaras, that is more intimate. And therefore he showed again his 2 armed forms. So that's Arjuna's service. Does that help to understand?
Yeah.
These points are further explained also in Srila Prabhupada's lectures and so on. But, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, someone can read text 23, please.
उपदिष्टामन्ता च भर्ता भोक्ता महेश्वरः परमात्मेति चाप्य उक्ता देहि अस्मिन् पुरुषः परः. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul.
So that's a lot of information. So it means he is present in everyone's body. He oversees. He permits. And is the supreme proprietor. So it means it's different from the individual soul. That Paramatma is different because he's all pervading and he maintains all living entities. That so Paramatma is the Supreme Lord. It's an expansion of the Supreme Lord. And that's important to understand. Because we have heard about the yogis before. The yogis, it's said in 6, 7, I think, Chitatmana Prasantasma, Paramatma Samahita. If one conquers the mind, that Sita Atmana, then one becomes peaceful, no lamenting, no desires anymore in this world, one is completely peaceful, Prasanatma, then Paramatma Samahita, then one comes in contact with the super soul in the heart. But that's the purpose of the yogis. They come in contact with the super soul, but the super soul is the controller of material nature. So they realize, yes, the super soul controls material nature. Very good. And what then? Then you stay in this world, that's all. Nothing is going to happen. then you must understand or ask the question, who is this super soul? The super soul is an expansion of Krishna. And if one understands that, then one takes to Bhakti. That's the purpose. So, Paramatma is the Supreme Lord. He is present within to sanction the individual soul's desiring material enjoyment. Without sanction of the Supreme Soul, the individual soul cannot do anything. So, that's important information. When I studied 10 years ago the Bhaktivedanta course with Bhujampu used to say, he would say something and then he would say, if Krishna willing. If Krishna willing. So we are never independent. We cannot say, I'm going to plan, I'm going to do that and that and that and that. Maybe, if Krishna willing. So we should be humble always, if Krishna willing. Because he is the witness. He's the witness. He witnesses everything we desire. That we cannot hide anything. He is present everywhere. We cannot hide anything with Krishna. So best to be honest always with Krishna. That so he's staying there as a friend. So the living entity is marginal energy. So Goswamis made this distinction as Bairanga Sakti, Antaranga Sakti, and Tatastha Sakti. We are marginal energy. Marginal. Because we are marginal, we can connect with the Antaranga with the Bairanga Sakti, with the external or the spiritual energy. How do we connect as a soul with this? By our desire. If you desire to control material nature and enjoy like Krishna, then if you desire to control and to enjoy, you are connecting with the material energy. And that means you are pushing a button with your consciousness. I want to enjoy, I and mine. Then you come under the laws of nature, action, reaction, and so on. Or we can push on the green button, the spiritual button, with our desire, and understand I'm a part of Krishna, I'm going to serve and please Krishna. Then you come under the spiritual energy, which will purify you and bring you finally back to Godhead. So, but the living entity is marginal energy, and we have the freedom to do that. Connect to the marginal energy, or as marginal energy, we connect to the spiritual or the material energy. That if we decide to act separately from Krishna, independently from the sanction of the Lord, and we want to dominate, that's misuse of our independence. And then we suffer material miseries. So the Lord is always trying to convince the living entity to stop that trying to dominate material nature. But we have our minute independence. Krishna does not intervene with our desires. that. But yes, if we desire to dominate, we are rejecting the association with the spiritual light. So that's the cause, this misuse of our independence. That's why we are here. So the Lord gives us from without instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. And he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to real happiness. Whatever we want to achieve in this world will be baffled. That you will be frustrated. At last there is death, the biggest frustration. And it's Krishna who telling us, why not giving that up? I want you back. Yes. Text 24. Someone
Yeah, I'll do it. य एकं वेत्ति पुरुषं प्रकृतिं च गुणैः सह सर्वथा वर्तमानोऽपि न स भूयोऽभिजायते. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He'll not take birth here again, regardless of his present position.
So that we already explained. If you connect with the material energy, then you become more conditioned. If you connect with the spiritual energy with your desire, then you become liberated. It's up to us. But if one has this knowledge, you can do the necessary to get out of here. And that's what Krishna is saying here. That we can get this knowledge in the association with authorities, with saintly persons, the spiritual master. And they help us to revert to spiritual consciousness. They help us to understand Bhagavad Gita as it is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 25, please.
ध्यानेन आत्मनि पश्यन्ति कञ्चित् आत्मान आत्मना अन्ये सांख्येन योगेन कर्मयोगेन चापरे. Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires.
So, Srila Prabhupada makes a point in this purport first. There are different classes of men who search for the absolute truth. We heard before about the karma yogas. Karmane vatakarastema faleshkadachana. You do your duty and you are not attached to the results. And by doing that, gradually, one comes to the platform of knowledge, that one starts to see things clearly, because most lust is gone. And then, of course, then one understands, I'm not his body, but how to understand that I'm not his body. So then one goes to the next level, if one is fortunate, from karma yoga to jnana yoga. And the jnani, they study Vedanta They study Samkhya, and they study these 24 elements, but they come to the conclusion there is a 25th and a 26th element. Srila Prabhupada writes that in the purport. 25th is the spirit soul, 26th is the super soul. But yes, then they come to the conclusion, I'm Brahman, I'm spiritual. But how can I realize it? And then they go to the next level. And the next level is as the Ashtanga yogis. So they are practicing yam, niyam, ashan, pranayam, pratyahara, and finally they come to samadhi somewhere. And if they are lucky, if they are not deviated by mystic powers, they come in contact with the super soul. And then, if they understand that the super soul is an expansion of Krishna, they come to Bhakti, the real activity of the spirit soul. So that's important. We can also look at it from another angle. What are the characteristics of all these yoga systems, and why is Bhakti Yoga the highest? Karma Yoga means action without attachment, with detachment. So that's Karma Yoga has two qualities. If one goes from Karma Yoga to Jnana Yoga is different, has no activity anymore, but there's also two qualities. Two qualities, it is cultivation of knowledge and renunciation. Two qualities. But then, the Jnana yogi wants to experience being a spirit soul, what it is. Then it takes to Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga has three qualities. It is also in knowledge, that one is not a body, a spirit, and one is Brahman. There is some knowledge. That's one quality. Detachment must be there. That one must give up all attachment. And meditation. So it has three qualities. But if we come to Bhakti Yoga is a complete yoga because it has 5 qualities. It is action. There is detachment, because in Bhakti Yoga everything belongs to the Supreme Lord, not to us, and we are using Him in His service. That's real detachment. So action, detachment, and then we have meditation, devotion, and of course knowledge. It has 5 qualities. Therefore it's a complete yoga. You must have these 5 qualities. And only by Bhakti Yoga you can go back to the spiritual world. To enter the spiritual world in 1154, we have heard by Srila Prabhupada. But we had heard in the verse, Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service. Only by pure devotional service you can go back to the spiritual world. So these are these different yoga systems, and the devotees are the best. This Gaurav Prabhu
Can you please tell the key qualities of Ashtanga Yoga of discussion? One was like jhana.
I don't understand you. It's not clear.
Can you hear it now, Maharaj?
That's better, yeah. That's better.
So can you please tell the qualities of Ashtanga Yoga again? Ashtanga Yoga.
Yeah, 3 qualities. It's detachment, knowledge, and meditation. Yes. Okay. And of course, in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada said, the atheists, the agnostics, the skeptics, the monists, they cannot get spiritual understanding. Impossible. Good. 26. Can someone read 26?
अन्ये त्वमेवम् अजानन्तः श्रुत्वा येभ्यः उपासते तेऽपि जातिरन्त्य एव मृत्युं श्रुति परायणाः. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death.
Yes. So, Lord Krishna emphasizes here that the hearing process from authorities is very important. That so Lord Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, Lord Chaitanya says that if one hears the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then that, yes, if one takes advantage of this hearing from realized souls, healthy one should become able to understand everything. Although the common man is not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one to transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. So Srila Prabhupada complains many times in lectures. He says, yeah, in this society, he was in America at Massachusetts School for Higher Technology, I think. And he asked the students, where is the department that explains the spiritual philosophy of life? There's no education in this society about that. Therefore, the recommended process from here is to hear from authorities, especially to hear from the Mahatma. So that will help one to transcend material existence and go back to Godhead. So, I think there's a lot to say about that. We can think of examples from the scriptures of those who were greatly conditioned in illusion, thinking themselves the master. Duryodhana is an example that, we can meditate on how important is this hearing. That many of you may have become devotees just by hearing a lecture of a Swami and becoming attracted. Reading Prabhupada's books is also a kind of hearing from a Mahatma. So this is, You can see in our own lives, the tiny jiva foolishly thinks himself the master. How many times have I thought I'm going to be happy in this world and I will make my plans, but it didn't work out. But, good. We will now pause for 10 minutes. The time now, it's 8 o'clock. Yeah. Let's resume at 10 past 8 for the second part. I will start the next session with questions if you have, and otherwise we continue with the next session. See you in 10 minutes, 10 past 8. Thank you. Hare Krishna, so we can resume now. Are there any questions? So if there are no questions, then we will continue. We can have at the end some time for questions. So in this last section, from verses 27 till 35, Lord Krishna will explain that one who understands this distinction between the body and its owner and the super soul, and one who knows the process of liberation, can attain the supreme goal. So we will start with text 27, which is on the board. Someone can read the Sanskrit piece. Yeah. Gaurav Prabhu, you are muted. Okay, I can read it. Yavat sanya teken shit satvan stavara sangramam kshetra kshetriya sam yogat tatvidi bharatashava. O chief of the Bharatas, know whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So whatever is created is a combination of the living entity and material nature. Without the touch of the superior energy, living entity cannot do anything. A plant will grow when there is a soul inside. Otherwise the seed will not develop without a soul. So that is the point, that life comes from life. Thus, the life is a soul and is eternal. That's the soul is the fuel in the machine. Without the fuel, the machine will not move. So there must be a touch of the superior energy. Matter comes from spirit, that's the reality also. Like, where do chemicals come from? We have a lemon tree. Because of the soul, the tree grows and produces lemon. That's acidic chemical. But without the touch of the soul, it will not happen. So everything is a combination. And that combination is done by the Supreme Lord as the Super Soul. He's the controller of both superior and inferior nature, material and spiritual nature. So the material nature is created by the Lord, and the superior nature is placed into material nature. We are put in this machine made of material energy. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Richa Yunatisti Brahmyam Sarvabhutanam Yantra Udayam Maya. Krishna says, I'm in the heart of every living entity, and I control all living entities, all the wanderings of the living entities, who are seated on a machine made of material energy. They are seated there. They are being placed here in this material nature. And all these activities and manifestations are taking place. Now, Krishna, in text 28, explains us what knowledge is. It's one definition of knowledge. Can someone read the text? It's on the screen.
समं सर्वेषु भूतेषु तिष्ठन्तं परमेश्वरं विनश्यत्स्व विनश्यन्तं यः पश्यति स पश्यति. Translation. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees.
Yeah, thank you. So Lord Krishna says here, one who is actually in knowledge, he sees the combination of different things. The body, the proprietor of the body, which is the individual soul, and the super soul, the friend of the individual soul. One who sees them is in knowledge. Knowledge means, in other words, to see the soul, the super soul, who are situated within the body. So after the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist, and they go eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. That, yes, this is the super soul and the soul in the body. They move together from one body to another. That, yeah. But then one may question, okay, when one sees that, but how do I transcend this Maya, this material energy? Yes. So, what vision is required to transcend material nature? Can someone read text 29 on the screen?
समं पश्यन् हि सर्वत्र समावस्थितम् ईश्वरं न हिनस्तै आत्मना आत्मनां ततो याति paraṁ gatim. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind, thus he approaches the transcendental destination.
So what is the point here? The mind is generally addicted to sense gratification. But if the mind turns to the super soul, then one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding, Srila Prabhupada writes. So when one sees Paramatma in every being, one moves beyond the influence of Maya. We have heard that before, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmanaka Vastini Sunishev Svapakacha Pandita Samadakshana. One who sees the soul in the heart of a Brahman, an elephant, a dog eater. He has spiritual vision. And and then one moves beyond Maya. So it means everything in this world is a combination of matter and spirit. And we have to learn to see the spirit. We have to learn to see the person. It's like Srila Prabhupada tells us about this man. He was dying in the hospital and his daughter was there. And when he left the body, the last breath came that then the daughter was crying, "My father has left, my father has left. My father is gone." But where is he gone? The body is still there. Then they seemingly understand that he's not a body. But we should understand that every living entity is a spirit soul. The same spirit soul in a dog. So we should treat the dog with respect. Not that we get the dog into the house, that's dirty, should remain outside. But respect for every living entity. Because the super soul is in their heart. The soul and the super soul are there. That every body is a temple in that sense. And then, it's like Brigari, the hunter, who was instructed by Narada Muni. He was a hunter, he was killing so many animals. But then when he was instructed by Narada Muni and he became a devotee and was planting the tulsi tree before his hut, was instructed and he started to chant Hare Krishna. Then, a few months later, Narada Muni came back with Parvata Muni. And when Brigari the hunter saw the spiritual master arriving, then he first brushed carefully away the ants that he would not harm them and offered his dandavat. And Parvata Muni said, before he was a cruel hunter, and now he's even afraid to kill an ant. So that is, when one becomes spiritually advanced, one sees only Krishna, the super soul, everywhere in this world. So that's the Uttamadikar. He sees only Krishna. And he sees our Krishna as a super soul, brings the living entity into illusion and makes and serves them by giving them intelligence. sometimes good intelligence, sometimes bad intelligence according to their desire. But an exalted personality sees all this. So this spiritual, and that spiritual vision is required to make spiritual advancement and to get out of the illusory energy that good. Now text 30, now it becomes a bit enigmatic, puzzling. If someone can read 30, please.
प्राकृतेव च कर्माणि क्रियमाणानि सर्वशः या पश्यति तथात्मानम् आकर्तारं स पश्यति. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees.
Yes, we heard that before. 327. Prakriti kiyamani gunakarma sausahankara vimudatma kartam iti manyate. Everything is done by material nature, and one who thinks that one is the doer, that he's an illusion, is a vimuda, super as that Krishna has explained before. We heard that before. This is chapter 5, text 8, 9. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So that means, the soul desires to move the hand, and the hand moves, but that's done by material nature. It's done by the super soul. He controls all energies, controls the demigods, instructs the demigods to combine their energies to move the hand. So that is interesting. Krishna says, Sarvasya samridishani nata shmitigam apamsa. I'm sitting in everyone's heart, and for me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. That's also done by the super soul. Whatever you forget is done by the super soul. Whatever you know is done by the super soul. Whatever you remember, it's given by the super soul. It doesn't depend on us. Sarva. I'm sitting in the heart of every living entity. I control these wanderings. Of course, Krishna said also in the 5th chapter that is nadateka chit papam nacheva sukhitam vibhu. That is the verse, I think it's 17 or something. Yeah, 15. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of ignorance, which covers their real knowledge. Here, Krishna says, I'm also not the doer. Is a living entity who in his past life has performed pious or sinful activities. And he gets the reaction now, I did not do that, they are doing that. And I'm not responsible for their desires, Krishna says. But before he said in 5:14 nakartit from nakarmani lokasyo chichachi prabhu karma falasango yogam sampastupavartate. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by material nature, all done by the super soul. So the question is, what are we doing? Krishna explains in the 18th chapter, in verse 14, Adishtanam tata karta karnam sapritach vidam vividasya pritakshista daivan shaifatra panchnam. 5 factors of action. The body, Adishtanam. The body is controlled by the super soul, not by us. Then you have the karta, the doer. That's the spirit soul. The spirit soul is also the doer, but it's not the doer. It's doing things only by desiring. And then you have the karanam, the senses. The chesta, endeavors in the mind. That's also the subtle body, also under control of the super soul. Super soul controls these endeavors in the subtle body and controls the body, controls the senses, and we are only desiring. So we should always be aware of it. We desire, but I desire to move my hand, but if I can move my hand, it's a mercy of the super soul so that is deep philosophy and not easy to understand for the conditioned soul. But we must learn to live according to this point. If we become purified, surely we will understand that we are not the doer. Krishna is controlling everything. The only free will, minute free will we have, we can desire what we want. But if our desire will be fulfilled in material nature, depends on the super soul who gives us, fulfills our desire according to what we deserve. So the body is a machine designed to fulfill desires. Because of these desires, we are being put in these material bodies to suffer and to enjoy. Good. That is called as a bitter pill to swallow for the conditioned soul. Text number 31. Can someone read 31 on the screen?
Yada. Yeah. No, carry on, Mataji.
No, please, Mataji, carry on.
No, Mataji, this is, you do it. I have done it many a time, so please do it. It's all right.
Yada bhuta pathak bhavam ekastham anupashyati tata evacha vistaram dhamma sampadhyate tada. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So, one with spiritual vision, here it is said, he sees how these different bodies come about because of different desires of living entities, of the individual soul. But the soul is eternal and has nothing to do with these bodies. It's nothing to do with this mind. Sometimes we suffer in the mind that so many emotions, negative emotions, but we must learn to observe the mind, not to identify with the mind. But that's easy to say. You need spiritual power not to identify with the mind. If you have a good sadhana and strict in following Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, you get this power gradually. So, because material vision is not actual vision, that spiritual vision means, yes, one understands there are various bodies, and these bodies are there because of material desires of living entities. But they are not so important. They are temporary, these bodies. The living entity is important. And this, because the spirit soul, because it comes in contact by the material nature, because one wants to enjoy that, one gets different types of body. So one must get rid of these differentiations, making differentiations like this is a man, this is an animal, this is big or lower. So if we become purified in consciousness, we are able to develop Krishna consciousness. Then we see spiritual entities that so if we have such a vision, what will happen? That's explained in the next two verses. You can read 32, please.
Anaditvan nirgunatvat Paramatmayam avyaya sharirostipi konteya nakaroti nalipyate. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal and beyond the modes of nature. Despite connect with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled.
So that's interesting. Uddhav, in the Uddhav Gita, 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's asking Lord Krishna, please tell me about symptoms of conditioned and liberated soul. And what does Krishna say? That practically the same as he says at the end of this verse. Say the spirit soul, impossible. A spirit soul cannot be conditioned or liberated. It has nothing to do with the material energy. Because Lord Krishna explains, the spirit soul is spiritual, has nothing to do with matter. But it's the consciousness of the spirit soul which is contaminated with lust, anger and so on. And this consciousness covers our spiritual knowledge, and by that we identify with this body. And that's what's happening. So we have to remove this ignorance by hearing, and then shortly we come to that transcendental position. So the living entity is eternal, is not born, and in spite of being situated in the material body, it remains original and transcendental. And in the next verse, 33, Lord Krishna gives an analogy to help us to understand that. Can someone read the next verse?
यथा सर्वगतं सौक्ष्म्यात् आकाशं नोपलीयते सर्वत्रावस्थितो देहे तथात्मानोपलिप्यते. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body.
Yeah, so Prabhupada writes in the poem, therefore it is impossible to see with the material eyes of the living entity is in contact with this body and now is out of it after the destruction of the body. Mother Rukmini, you have a question?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, can you please help me understand that soul and its consciousness? Because what I understand is consciousness. By consciousness, we understand soul. That there is a soul in a body. So, how to discriminate both of that? Because as we know that Bhumi Napurna Lo Vayu Thamano Buddhi Revacha. So, 8 elements which we learned yesterday, that will be here. Only me, I, soul, that will go to the spiritual world from this material world. So Maharaj, what consciousness is there? Mind, body, intelligence is here. So I'm not able to understand, please.
Yeah. I don't know if I get your question right, but the point is, the spirit soul has its own identity, its own feeling, willing, and thinking, its own intelligence. It does not need the material body to exist. It can exist separate from that. But the spiritual body cannot be used for material activities. Impossible. The spiritual body can only be used to serve Krishna. Spiritual activities connected with the spiritual energy. If we desire to serve ourselves and try to become the enjoyer and the proprietor, which is Krishna's position, Krishna says, okay, you want to become God. There's one problem. I'm God. So you have first to forget me. Therefore everyone in this world has forgotten Krishna. And Krishna has given us at that moment a subtle and a gross body. A subtle body of intelligence and mind, but that is material intelligence and material mind. The material intelligence makes plans for enjoyment in this world. You cannot do that with your spiritual body. Therefore Krishna gives you a separate intelligence, which is not us, and a separate mind. A mind concentrated on enjoying in this world. And the mind misuses the intelligence to make plans for enjoyment. And that's what everyone does in this world. But we are not this mind and this intelligence. We have our own mind and intelligence. But it's now become inactive. Inactive because it's made inactive because it's covered. Our consciousness is covered by lust. So we have to remove the lust. We have to spiritualize the material subtle body. We spiritualize the mind by thinking of Krishna. We spiritualize the intelligence by hearing transcendental knowledge. And Jaldi, by doing that, through the performance of devotional service, our mind and intelligence become spiritualized. And if we spiritualize it, our material intelligence and material mind becomes inactive and our spiritual intelligence becomes active. And then we realize, I'm not this body. I don't need this body to exist. When the body dies, I'm not dying. If I'm in spiritual consciousness, my spiritual consciousness will not be interrupted. So that's the process of Krishna consciousness. And that's the process of liberating us from this misidentification. Because that's what's said here. It's just a misidentification. We think we are this material mind. And suffering comes into this mind. If you concentrate on this suffering and this mind and you're absorbed in it, you will suffer more. If you are engaged in Krishna conscious activities, there's no suffering anymore. There's suffering. And you will see in the Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit, he was hearing for 7 days, not drinking, not eating. He forgot about it. Because he was on the spiritual platform. It's not easy to understand in the conditioned state, but if we make advancement in Krishna consciousness, we will come to that point. We never die. We are eternal and blissful, but we identify with this body because out of attachment to enjoyment. So we have to reverse that, get rid and purify our heart, and then we will come to that vision which is explained here. Does that help, Mother Rukmini?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, does it mean that in the spiritual world we have mind and intelligence? Ego is here only. In the spiritual world, the soul, me. I am having like mind and intelligence. I am having in the spiritual world, and here I am having this material body along with the subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego. But if I do devotional service, my mind and intelligence will be spiritualized by performing pure devotional service. And so, Maharaj, did I say the right? Did I get you the right?
Not really. The point here is that there is a subtle thing that the spiritual body has no separate mind and intelligence. It is the spiritual body, the spirit soul, who thinks, who feels, and so on. It's not separate. In the material world, it's separate.
Okay.
So, in the material world, we have false ego, but we must come to our real ego, which is a soul. We are a servant of Krishna. Otherwise, the other things you said are right, but you understand this subtle difference. We don't have a separate thing in the spiritual body. The spiritual body is thinks, feels, and willing, and spiritual body means spirit soul. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada said, the spiritual senses are there, they are just covered over now by a subtle and a gross body. And we have to remove this covering by killing the material subtle body. Killing the material body, get rid of it, is by spiritualizing it. And then it disappears. And then you can come to the point that your own thinking, feeling and willing is done again by the spirit soul. Although that's liberation. Then that's Jivan Mukta. You can be still in the body, the gross body, but the subtle body is not there anymore. The spirit soul who is active, it's spiritualized. And then you don't suffer. And I give you an example of that. When Srila Prabhupada in 1977, my Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Maharaj, was serving him, and he was very sick in August, but then at the end of August, Srila Prabhupada went better, got better, and he decided to go to America. So it took a flight first to London, but when he came in London, at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, he was again, his body was very sick, and he was in bed the whole day. And a devotee was serving him. Srila Prabhupada asked Srila Prabhupada, are you suffering? And Srila Prabhupada replied, I don't feel anything. So that's Jivan Mukta. He was identifying with the spirit soul. That's Jivan Mukta. Does that help to understand?
Thank you so very much, Maharaj. Maharaj, just one thing. I have understood this. Maharaj, now, mind and intelligence is disappear by the spiritual mind and spiritual intelligence, because it has spiritualized now. As in the case of liberated souls. So Maharaj, when the body, when we go to spiritual world, then only we go, like we have becoming the eternal, as you are saying, that thinking, willing, feeling and willing will be there only. So this spiritual mind and body will be spiritual body now, spiritual mind and spiritual intelligence will not more go there, right, Maharaj?
No, from the moment the spiritual, the material mind and intelligence become purified, your thinking and willing is again done by the spirit soul. Understand? That and not by the subtle body anymore. That is liberation. So this is in the Bhagavatam also. I think now it's in the yeah. This is verse 2.10.6 of the Bhagavatam that gives a definition of liberation. It says, liberation is a permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable and subtle material bodies. He has given them up. That's okay.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Okay, then we have the last two verses of today. 34th. Can someone read this verse? That's an interesting verse.
यथा प्रकाशति एका कृष्णं लोकमिमब्रवीत् क्षेत्रं क्षेत्री तथा कृष्णं प्रकाश्यति भारत. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness.
Yes, thank you. That is a good verse for preaching also. So consciousness comes from the spirit soul, not from the body. And the spirit soul is situated in the heart, in the area of the heart. It's kept there by 7 airs, by the super soul keep it. It's floating there. Because it's not that they do a heart transplant and they are transplanting the soul. That's not possible. They can remove the heart, but the soul remains in this area that's floating. And the consciousness comes from the soul, and the consciousness is transported throughout the body to the bloodstream. Everywhere there is blood, we have feeling, consciousness. So that is the proof of the presence of the soul. There is consciousness all over the body. As soon as the soul passes away, consciousness is gone. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of matter. It's a symptom of the soul. But also the super soul is there, the friend of the soul that is in every body, and he has supreme consciousness. That we have individual consciousness. He has supreme consciousness. He's conscious of everything, but everything thinks. His consciousness is pervading the whole universe as the super soul. Between every atom, that and it's by this consciousness that all these laws of material nature are going on. That we see in the cells there is DNA. He controls his DNA, and so he has organized the whole thing. Good. The last verse today, 35. Yes, can someone read? Kshetra, Kshetra, Yorivam.
Kshetra, Kshetra, Prabhuji, continue.
Okay. Kshetra, Kshetra, Evam, Antara, Jnana, Chakshusha, Bhuta, Prakriti, Moksham, Cha, Ye Viduranti, Te Padam. Translation. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal.
Yes, to that process of liberation of material nature, one has to learn by the spiritual master, who teaches the student by various instructions how to get free from the material concept of life. So we have, in this chapter, we have looked at the body. The body is matter. We have looked at 24 elements of the body. But beyond that is the soul and the super soul. The soul and the super soul are different. So these are the things we have learned here in this section of today. That so by our knowledge we contemplate on that, but finally you must realize it. You must realize it. That so one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Lord Krishna says, Srila Prabhupada writes at the end of the purport, that so accepting a spiritual master, submissively inquiring, so one can understand how the whole material manifestation is a combination of soul and all these material elements, and both are under the supervision of the super soul. So then, if one understands that, then one can liberate himself, and then one can transfer him to the spiritual world, because then one will worship Krishna. He has the supervision and surrender to him. Because the super soul is an expansion of the Supreme Lord. So everything is under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. If we then surrender to the Supreme Lord and develop unalloyed devotional service, and by unalloyed devotional service, develop prema, we can go back to the spiritual world. So, any question further? Yes, go ahead. That
When you discuss about the three different yogas, the qualities of three different yogas,
yeah.
so are you saying like the Dhyana first, Ashtanga Yoga, then Bhakti Yoga? So Bhakti Yoga contains all the qualities of Ashtanga Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga contains all the qualities of Jnana Yoga also. Right? Is it so?
No. I will just show it just a moment. First, I will write it on the board to make it clear. Just a moment. Up. Yeah, document is there. So first we have Karma Yoga. This yoga has two qualities: action, detachment. And then we have Jnana Yoga. There is no action anymore. There is only detachment, and there is knowledge. And then you have Ashtanga Yoga. There you have detachment. You have knowledge that we are a soul. And you have meditation. And then you have Bhakti Yoga, the highest yoga and complete yoga, because it has action, detachment, you have knowledge, and then you have meditation. When we do devotional service, we meditate on Krishna. It's for Krishna, but we do it with devotion, and that has all qualities. And the source where you can read about it is Bhaktivedanta Purpose. That's a book by Shivaram Swami, and he elaborates on that. So this is, but it's also important that you can explain Karma Yoga. Will leads to knowledge. That and then Jnana Yoga leads to the conclusion that we are Brahman, not the body, but to experience that, well, that one starts practicing Ashtanga Yoga, and here leads to knowledge and to the question, who am I? Am I spiritual? So, and then they go to Jnana Yoga. Then they practice Ashtanga Yoga, and if they are successful and not deviated by mystic powers, then they get darshan of the super soul. And they become aware that the super soul controls controls material nature. Then the question may arise, what is the source of the supersoul? Then they may conclude rightly that the supersoul is an expansion of Krishna. Then they take to Bhakti Yoga. So that shows how all these previous yogas, Karma Yoga, Stanga Yoga, Jnana Yoga, they are lower yogas. And they are meant to bring one to a higher level. But why does Krishna explain that? Because he's also concerned with these transcendentalists who are not so advanced, and he wants to inspire them, to bring them to a higher level. Therefore he speaks about that. Not only that, in Bhakti Yoga we are also going to these stages. In the beginning it's like Karma Yoga, we are serving not for us anymore, but for Krishna. And then we get knowledge. Krishna gives knowledge to the heart. And then by that knowledge, gradually we become purified. We become purified and we become more detached. And we start to meditate more deeply on Krishna. And then we surpass liberation, we become attracted, and we come to real Bhakti Yoga. We can add devotion, because to add devotion, to love for Krishna, first we have to purify our heart of the lust. So it's a process from Shraddha to Prema. Shraddha, we have faith, and then because we have heard from a Swami or read Prabhupada's books, and then we want Sadhu Sangha, we want to associate, we take initiation, we follow the instructions of the spiritual master, Bhajna Kriya, we struggle to follow them, sometimes we follow, sometimes not, and then we become steady, and then we give up our offenses, and then Anartha Nivritti, the purification of the heart, starts. And that usually takes 20-30 years or longer. And then one comes to Nistha, and then one becomes peaceful, no material desires anymore. And then one becomes attracted to Krishna. And then love develops. One finds Krishna in the heart, develops bhava, develops this love. So we are going to the same stages. Yes, if one realizes that one is not a body, that's liberation. But that's not sufficient to go back to the spiritual world. One must develop love for Krishna, because that's the activity of the spirit soul. Impersonalists, they think they stop at Brahman realization. They have only Jnana Yoga, and they think realization, I'm not a body, I'm Brahman, and Brahman is the highest. There's only Brahman and I become God. But it's like someone who comes out of the hospital. He has cured, and he remains hanging out in the hospital. But no, after being cured, you must go back home and start your normal activities, your work and so on. So the spirit soul When it's liberated, it has to go to its normal activities, which is serving Krishna. And then only we are happy. But no, Brahman, they think, yes, that's the end. And Astanga yogas, yeah, mostly they go for mystic powers, or they, yeah. But even if they realize a super soul, then what then? What then? The super soul is the control of material nature. Good, but you stay in this material world. Then you must realize what the super soul is, an expansion of Krishna, and go for Bhakti. Because only by Ananya Bhakti you can go back to the spiritual world. You must exercise the activity they do in the spiritual world already here. And that's the practice of Bhakti Yoga. Anyway, I'm trying to give you a deeper understanding, but because I know you have to write essays probably and so on. And this is, I found essential to understand that. I hope this helps. Any other question?
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I would say tomorrow and the day after, I have unfortunately a few things to do which are beyond my my powers. But we will meet again on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at the normal time. Then next Saturday, I'm traveling to France because I have to be in France, in New Mayapura, because there's the Tirobhav of Bhakti Charamraj and they want me to be there. But from France, from then the Monday, I will continue the classes from New Mayapur. So I'm looking forward to see you all on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
As a small question, I have heard like super soul, spiritual master is also expansion of a super soul. Is it true?
Well, the interesting is that, like, if the spiritual master is not there, then you use a picture of your Guru Maharaj, of the spiritual master on the altar, right? And you ask permission, you are doing the puja for the deities on behalf of the spiritual master. And you offer food on behalf of the spiritual master. But the spiritual master is not there. It is his picture. So that Srila Prabhupada said about that, then the spiritual master, that picture is an expansion of the super soul, that the spiritual master. But of course, the saying that the spiritual master is an expansion of the super soul is antaryami. The super soul instructs you from within. That so the super soul is non-different from Krishna, and because it's non-different from Krishna, is like a representative of Krishna, and so the spiritual master is also representative of Krishna. So is a representative of Krishna, but is also a representative of the super soul. Because the super soul and Krishna are non-different. It's an expansion of Krishna. So yes, in that sense, it's certainly correct. The spiritual master is considered an expansion of Krishna. That, in the sense that he is representative of Krishna. He says the same thing as Krishna without any difference. Because after my spiritual master has passed away, and I've only his picture, but I feel it's still guiding me. Yeah. So it's still present in his picture, in his instructions and so on. So in that sense, because the spiritual master promises the disciple, I will bring you back to the spiritual world. So does that mean that when I don't make it in this life, in next life my spiritual master has to come back? No. The super soul will arrange that I meet another representative of my spiritual master, and he will guide me further. So the super soul and the spiritual master have a very intimate connection in that sense. Yeah, that's what I could say on it. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. But just a small question in it. Like I've heard in a lecture or in the memories of by Bhakti Maharaj, one Prabhupada, where Maharaj says like a yogi when attains perfection sees super soul in his heart, and a bhakta sees a spiritual master in his heart. Like,
Yeah, that is as long as we are in this material world as a disciple of a spiritual master, we should always think of our spiritual master and Krishna as connected. That's very important in everything we do. It's by the mercy of the spiritual master. But of course, it means also for us, because that I learned from Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, that I tell you, a few years ago I was at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and because I gave Bhakti Sastri to the students, to the devotees in Leicester, and many graduated, and they were there to receive initiation, and my Guru Maharaj asked me to speak to them. And before I started to speak, I asked the blessings of my spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. And he told me, no, I cannot give you blessings. And he was pointing to Prabhupada. That's where the blessings come from. So, when I think of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj as my spiritual master, I think also of Prabhupada. I will never separate them. That I am very conscious the mercy comes to Prabhupada through Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, but it comes to Prabhupada. And that was also Srila Prabhupada. When he was traveling, he was always saying that it's all the mercy of my Guru Maharaj. He sent me these boys, young boys and girls. He was always connected. So that's true, that a devotee thinks of Krishna, but that thinking is never disconnected with the spiritual master. That's going together. Because that's the source of the mercy. That spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, is more merciful than Krishna. Because they are saving us, really. That's something to think about. But of course, if we are more advanced, then what happens? You will learn that in the Bhagavatam, This is 3.9.11, Brahma's prayers for creative energy. From Bhakti Yoga Parivavtarit Saraya Asesu Texita Patronatuna Tapumsum Yatyadira Diyata Urukaya Vivavayanti Tatat Vapupanaya Setadanukraya. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts becomes cleansed, and you take seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in a particular form of transcendence in which they always think of you. So that's Ishtadev. That means that if we become advanced, then we think of Krishna in the heart. But we think we will find Krishna in the form in which we are attached to him. That can be Radha Gopinath, Radha Madan Mohan, or the form we are attached to him. That Krishna takes that form within the heart. So the super soul becomes Krishna for the devotees, not a four-armed form. So that is also a point to consider. But even when the devotee has that realization, he will never connect seeing Krishna in the heart with the mercy of the spiritual master. Never. That's what I understood. Does that help? Prabhu? Okay. Good. Then we meet on Wednesday. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Bol.